And now
Oh
we're
my
gonna go
gosh.
live on YouTube. Let me see. Going live. We are live, and let me just check
We're going
here.
live.
Hold on. Let me just check on my phone. We're actually live. Oh yeah, we are live on Facebook.
Love it.
We're live on YouTube.
Yes, and then I'm gonna test YouTube on my phone. Let
Tristan
me
doesn't care
see.
about Facebook.
Oh, I see it. Bro, I look horrible on YouTube. I'm so blurry on YouTube. It's crazy.
Okay, bro, it doesn't matter. So let's just focus on the message here. Okay, so okay, vale. Can you hear me?
Yup.
All right. All right, Tristan. Okay, okay.
Dude, I'm so blurry. I'm so
Don't
blurry.
worry.
You can't
Don't
see me.
Tristan, they
There's
don't
like
need to
9
see you. It's
pixels.
fine. It's fine.
don't worry. Don't worry.
We're protecting your
Okay.
identity.
Okay. Welcome everybody to our third live stream of the Philosophy in Real Life podcast. I'm joined right now by Tristan Sleeper, aka a ghost, because we can barely see him because he doesn't have reliable connection. But what matters is his opinion, so we'll be able to listen to him as well. And then also joined for the first time by Santiago Rios from Brazil. He's not from Brazil, but he's
I'm
joining
living
us
in
from
Brazil.
Brazil right now.
Yeah.
Yes, living in Brazil right now. Okay, well, today we actually are going to read something together. It was a text that Santi sent us, and so I would like to discuss this. So let me see if I can open this. I'm gonna find the text. Hold on. Santi's quote, and okay,
Gosh.
you okay,
Guys, I
Tristan?
really should have just did the Wi Fi.
Tristan, you gotta live with it.
I
You gotta
should have
live
just.
with it now.
Too late, Tristan. Too
Uh,
late. We're doing it. Okay, so
I
let me
know. I
see.
know.
Let me
This
see
will
if I
humble me.
can.
I feel humble.
Okay, let me see. Okay, okay, I'm gonna share it. Let me confirm that you can see it. Ventana aquí.
Let's take a look.
Hustle.
Can you see
Yup.
it?
Yup.
Yeah, I
All
see it.
right. All right. So Santi, please read it
Oh,
so
I'm the
that people
wow, you
can
put me
hear.
on the spot. All right.
No, bro, but you sent it to us.
All
So
right, yeah, I'm
my
good. I'm
English
ready to
is not
go. I'm ready to go.
my English,
You're lucky I got
but
LASIK. I can see
slowly.
the small print. I got you. I
It,
got you.
okay,
All right, here we
please.
go. Says I have the power to feed starving people and house the homeless. Most people who are reading this will have the resources to adopt kids from orphanages and starving and dangerous regions of the world, raising them in safe and loving homes. But even if we do a great deal of such noble work, we must admit that it will never be enough. Whatever donation I make to a charitable organization, it can never be as much as I could have given. I can never diminish my carbon footprint enough, or give to the poor enough, or support medical research enough, or otherwise do the things that would render me morally blameless. This is a painful conclusion to reach, and one that leads to the root of the problem. We live in a world that carries around an enormous and growing burden of guilt and yearns, sometimes even demands, to be free of it. Finding ways to press into this emotional reality can wedge open the cracks with secular narratives. People, as it turns out, still long, even if it is subconsciously, for a release from the gnawing feeling of guilt that casts a shadow over even their most quote unquote successful pursuits of pleasure and well meaning philanthropic efforts.
Okay. All right, Santi, since you were the one who sent it to us, I'd like to ask you a little bit like what is when you read that text, what moved you? What is like if you could summarize kind of like the key ideas according to your interpretation of the portion of the
Yeah,
text.
I think to me this is about like an internal feeling of dissatisfaction or maybe lack of contentment with our morality. Like there's
Mm,
even, like I do think that there's this emotional benefit to being sacrificial. So, like, whenever you give to the poor or whenever you do these virtuous acts, there's also what I think everybody experiences a good feeling that comes along with it. But the problem with that is that it's never enough. And I think we all understand intellectually that one person can't solve the world's problems. But I think where that negative emotion comes from, and what's kind of articulated here, is the fact that we know we probably should be doing more and we can do more than whatever it is we're doing. And so it's the satisfaction of whatever it is we have to give. It feels like we can never be enough to be this morally blameless person, is how it puts it. So that to me is like the core idea here.
Okay. Okay. Tristan, any part that you like to highlight? I'm gonna take the text after so that we can discuss these what Santi just summarized.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much that I want to like take apart in this and try to understand a little bit more. And but it does bring me back to this like thought that I had many years ago. Not really a thought. It was actually I think it was something I read, and I don't remember the book, but it really had. It was talking about this idea of um, sort of the need for mercy because we
Hmm.
are like incapable of doing enough. Basically, the idea is that we will always fall short of any ideal that we have, and I think that this really raises that point very clearly, and the fact that like no matter how much you have, little or more, like there is more that you can do. There's always more that you can do. You can always be a nicer person, a more loving person, a more compassionate person. I think about these resources. I think you and I had a podcast a while ago where we talked about like like we all have an extra $5 to give to somebody. We all
That's right.
have we all have things that we're keeping for ourselves that we could give to someone else. And what does that make us? And what does that mean about us? And how do we live with ourselves, knowing this reality? And like, what is the right way to
Hmm.
live with ourselves? And I think that that's a really it's a really interesting question, but I like this kind of conversation that's brought upon in the second part of this message, where it says, finding ways to press into this emotional reality can wedge open the cracks within secular narratives. People, as it turns out, still long, even if it is subconsciously, for a release from the gnawing feeling of guilt. Like that is, I don't know. I think it's interesting, and I think there's a reality to like there's a guilt that we can feel because we know that we could be doing more, and so then the question is how do we manage that? And I guess we could talk through what our different opinions are on how to manage that. But
Okay.
I would say that it syncs well with me. It syncs well with me. This passage.
Okay. I was taking some notes because it's actually quite meaty, the text that Santi sent us. And it's something that I was actually thinking about. So let me just take the text so that we can actually see each other, but like all of us better here. Um, yeah, I think I was reading A Secular Age by Charles Taylor, that is, well, which is a really thick book, and he explains how was it possible for 600 years ago to live in a society, or in a Western culture, Western society, in which the existence of God or belief was accessible to us all, yet back then, and it was virtually impossible not to believe, to a time in history, or right now our Western culture, in which it's virtually impossible to believe or to have a deep belief, right? Because now we live in this secular culture, pluralistic society, in which we are constantly reminded that there are so many ways in which we could carry out our actions or our way of living, and we are always faced with so many other possibilities, to choose, like, okay, I could be doing this or I could be doing that, and we don't have this sense of belonging into a community, in the sense like a medieval person would be, like, oh yeah, there's a God, I go to church, and then I take care of my crops and I die. That's basically it. Life is very simple. And yes, they were obviously aware of other religions. Obviously, the Muslims here, for example, in Spain, there were Christians, there were Muslims, there were all kinds of the Jews also here. Like we in Spain, for example, you have periods in which there was a intermingling of many religions and they cohabited together. But whenever that happened, a Muslim will look at a Christian like, okay, yes, I know that of their existence and their belief, but this is still strange. They didn't contemplate becoming a Christian as a real possibility, you know. But I feel like now we live in such a society, especially in Western cultures, in which we actually feel quite moved by these real possibilities, right? And something that this author was analyzing, that when I was reading this text, I was thinking about this passage, is that it has come to a point in, so to speak, Western ethical ideals, that we have this belief in universal benevolence that is an ideal too heavy to carry, or too heavy to actually endorse, or fully realized in our lives. And he thinks that this is a development of the agape, right, the Christian love. Because, and you can see the tension here, because it's a complicated issue. When I think about it, it's like really, really complicated. For example, you have the left and the right. And for the left, it doesn't matter that you don't have the US passport. They think that you are a human being. But I know that then the right, for example, people in the right is like, yeah, that sounds like celestial music, but you still need some form of legality to control the influx of people into a country. And so you have this reality. But I feel like, for example, the left-leaning people, they tend to be more empathetic of social causes and causes and minorities and refugees and all kinds of people, right? But the challenge with that is that the this drive to include everybody, for them to enjoy all kinds of benefits and privileges, is virtually like so burdensome that it's so hard to even realize. Like, it's actually a utopia. It's not even possible to realize something like this in a political state, because there will be some boundaries. There is a constitution, there is a concept of legality and non-legality and things like that. And so I think that, the so to speak, the aspiration to this form of good is actually legitimate and is good. But I feel like, when, for example, when I was talking to my wife about this, because she's, openly left-leaning, a left-leaning person, and she cares about minorities and all of that, sometimes she lives in tension. And I say, yeah, I mean, there's always something else that we could do, and we don't do it. And I think that it doesn't matter like where you live, really. Like, you could always even think, like, for example, in the civil war in Spain under Franco, under the dictatorship, like, there were neighbors that would still give potatoes to other neighbors who were in more need, right? So you don't need to even be wealthy. Like, you could, even if you are like in a quite bad predicament, you could still do more. You could still give one more potato, right? And so I think that it's just this utopia, right? This ethical ideal that is so good, but it will drive us crazy. It will take us to madness. It will just kill us. It will destroy us. And I think that that's why it's so important, to so to speak, to place, or to implement, or to situate, I don't know how to say it, but to place this aspiration towards universal benevolence in so to speak, in a hierarchy of other goods that will help you put this into the right place. I like G.K. Chesterton, an English writer. He used to say that the virtues in modern time, the virtues have gone mad. Like, meaning, like, now people either believe in just purely compassion or purely justice. But he said, hold on a second, we need both. But he said, like, whenever he saw the modern ethical outlooks of philosophies, moral philosophies in modernity, defined by this obsession with one good. And they take it to the extreme, right? Just compassion, just justice, just mercy. And he said, no. The virtues have gone mad. Like, we need to put them together again. And that's what he thought Christianity did very well. Anyways, so that is kind of like my first impression. I don't know what you guys think about that.
I was thinking as you were talking, like, I feel like one other layer to this that blows it up in modern society is the fact that we have such easy access to information and like things that are happening around the world that are
That
disasters,
is right.
it's a
That is right.
relatively new phenomenon. So like before, this concept of like, okay, I want to take care of my neighbor. If something happened in my community, if there was some sort of injustice with the people around me, then it, like maybe this idea of moral obligation is easier to digest because it's
Right.
right there and there's something directly that I can do about it. And then maybe that works a little bit better. But then now when you can hear about so many different issues going on at one time across the world. And this idea of being a global citizen and caring about things beyond your borders that I think you
That is
kind of
right.
mentioned a little
Yes.
bit,
Yes.
then it's like, okay, well, if I'm highlighting, or posting this one social issue on my social media story and raising awareness about it, there's at least 15 other issues that I'm not. But what makes one more important to raise funds for? And there's kind of these calculations, and part of that's to what extent they're political in nature and why some get attention and over others. But I feel like we're constantly aware in the world of social media about disasters going on across the world, and this idea of like, I should care about them too, right? But what's my
Mm.
obligation to them? And I feel like that's a really hard pill to swallow or to try to process, as opposed to it would have been before we existed in this reality.
Right. And I think that that
Yeah.
is a great point,
I
because if you are in a small neighborhood, like is within your reach, like the help that you are able to provide. Um, but it's really interesting, right? Because I think that at times we even equate or confuse or conflate like actual benevolence with just feeling strongly about it, right? Feeling strongly about it, like because
Mm.
for example, like right now, if and this is actually quite a study, the marketing and all of that of the nonprofits. Like if they show you a story of a particular individual, you are more likely to be moved by that story. But if they just give you a number, oh, X amount of people are being killed, or this pandemic or whatever, like then you become desensitized to numbers, and you just normalize this
yeah.
because for your psyche is too much. Your psyche will seek homeostasis,
Yeah.
will seek balance, and these peaks you are
hmm
not able to even how to even make sense of that. It's just beyond our capacity, I would say. And Tristan, sorry, go ahead.
No. I think it's real. I think that like, but what I've kind of like had to like settle on is like each person kind of just has to decide the problem it is that they want to deal with and that they want to confront in the world. Like, because the reality is just there are so many. I mean, every single person. Like, I don't know if you ever seen that video. I think it's Ricky Gervais in some show. I don't know what show it is, but he's like kind of walking down the street and some person is asking him to like feed the children. And he says, no, like, I don't want to. And the person's like, do you not care about starving children? And he's like, no, I just don't want to. Like, I do care. I just don't want to donate to your thing. And the guy's like, bro, like, how have a heart? And he comes back and he goes, dude, you're out here getting paid for this. Like, let's not pretend like you're doing this out of the goodness of your heart. Like, you're out here. We all know you're getting paid. Like 70% of whatever I give you is going to be paying for you standing out here. And then he kind of keeps walking, and he sees some old lady with like who's like asking money for, I don't know what it is, and he kind of drops like $5 inside her little thing and just shows, and he like, and like other guy can see it, but he's kind of making this point. It's like, I care. Like, it's not that I don't care, but don't come to me and accuse me and try to guilt me into caring about some cause. Like, you don't know anything about my life, and you don't know what I care about. Like, the reality is, I think we kind of just have to choose. And I think I appreciate Santi's point. Like, you need to just like, because we know so much, like, it's almost a burden. I think about Solomon, right? Like, it's like the amount of wisdom and knowledge that he had became a burden to him, at the end of the day. It's like he knew too much, and it was like, it's all folly. Like, it's all hovel at the end of the day. And so, like, you could, like, the best thing you could do is like eat, drink, and be merry, like, fear God. And that's all you can do with life, because what else? It's all just too much. So I think that a focus, like having a focus, I think is a really helpful way to try to, um, I don't know, kind of work through the noise, I guess, or try to fight through the noise of the heaviness of society. And yeah. So, anyways, those are my kind of like my thoughts. I don't know what you guys think about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the something that for the voice of your conscience is not always the voice of reason. It's
Interesting.
sometimes a very tyrannical voice. So
Mm.
basically, when you have this hyper good of this ethical ideal, right, at the pinnacle of your value system, is it always acts as a judge. You know, it always tells you what path you should take, right? So if, for example, if you for you it's really important to support dogs or pets or domestic animals, you know, if that is really important for you because you feel really moved to that, you will feel compelled to donate money or foster or adopt, like my wife. And that's why we have Leo. Some of you know Leo. Now everybody have like some adopted pit bull or something like that. We love Leo a lot. And so it always feels like a judge. And because I told my wife, well, if we go to Peru one day to visit, you are gonna die emotionally because you will see so many dogs abandoned, and that's actually quite normal. That's the day to day, because people can barely make it. So even so, much less the dogs, right? The dogs in Peru are gonna be in more precarious situation than the dogs in Spain, clearly. And so because of that, I said, oh, I cannot, you know, I'm gonna be crying every day and things like that. And I said, no, you probably won't, because you will normalize it. That's the reality there. You know, that's the day to day. Probably at the beginning will be really hard, but then you will adapt. And I think that it's a judge because, you know, you can see how this hyper good is informing you in what to do, what course of action you should take. But it's a judge because whenever you fall short, you will feel the voice of your conscience telling you you didn't do that well, or you could do more. But it gets to a point that the voice of your conscience becomes the voice of a tyrant. And so I think that that's why I think that
Mm.
the text that Santi sent us is getting to that, right? That it
Yeah.
doesn't matter how much we do, this voice inside of us, this moral compass, or this, you know, voice that we have internalized from society and these global problems into our psyches, into our conscience, is just too much. It's a voice that we can never quiet. And I think
Yeah.
that is where we need, so to speak, compassion, right? Because justice is like, no, you ought to do what you ought to do, period. You must do what it takes. It doesn't matter if you cannot do it. Doesn't matter. Like, the ideal will kill you, right? But I think that that's where compassion comes into the picture, of mercy, right? Because I think that when we think of mercy or compassion, what do we mean by that? Oh, you have done something wrong, and that's okay. So it's almost like you have this set of flaws, and I accept you the way you are. But if we just have compassion, if we just have mercy, then you will never become the person you could be, right? Because there's no aspiration to something else. So I think that we need, so to speak, this justice element or judge, this voice that is telling us always what to do, but also the compassion, that, or the mercy voice, or the merciful voice that is telling you, hey, but you're a finite human being, and you will mess up. And again, going back to Chesterton, it's very funny because he was a mystic when he was younger, and he said the following about Christianity, because he studied world religions and many other things, and he didn't become a Catholic until really late in his life, after being a very renowned intellectual. Actually, for people who don't know this, Chesterton wrote Heretics as a non-Catholic. He was just a thinker that some other, like, you know, many moral philosophies in modernity is really insufficient. I would say not wrong, but insufficient. And in that insufficiency, that's where the wrongness came from, according to him. But then he said that if he became, like, he said that if I'm a Christian, it's because this is the only religion in which my sins can be forgiven. And so it's getting to the side of compassion, right? Because he was driven by these ethical ideals too, but he realized that, hey, I need to be forgiven because I'm not everything I could be. I guess that, and I think that we need to, so to speak, embrace this cosmic forgiveness towards the otherness, towards ourselves, because we are not that which we could be. Basically, we're always insufficient. We are always
Yeah.
lacking, so to speak.
That makes sense. And I feel like you brought up a really good point. This text is mostly talking about like our internal conscience that feels this guilt based on not meeting our own value systems or what we think is right based on some philosophical idea, I guess. But
Yep.
the other layer is societal pressures to conform to set
Mm.
standard. And the example that like immediately came to mind that was interesting to navigate is like tipping culture in the United States. And there's like a societal expectation based on um, the like minimum wage for servers that like no, you should tip, you know, somewhere in the range between 15 to 20%. And nobody like really pushed back on that. It was like an expected thing, to the point where there's this interesting like public shaming aspect to somebody that doesn't meet that, right? Because it's sort of an injustice of you not conforming to this moral ideal of what you should do, of what is just. But then this started like expanding to like what other things should you tip for, and to give on top of what is like, I guess, the market value. And then I think a lot of companies then started adding, you know, this optional screen to after your purchase. Like, do you want to tip 50? Now it's like starts at 20. Like 20 is the minimum, and then it goes to like 35, and you can go other. But like there
Ridiculous.
comes this moment where you're like you're in the front of the line, you're checking out, and you kind of feel like everybody is looking behind you. You know, like they're gonna see like what I'm gonna
Yeah.
choose. And like you're wondering like what is the expect, because
Yeah.
it's not clear. It's like this new thing. What is the expectation here?
Right.
What is just? But you can apply that to so many other things where it's like, okay, not only do I feel this guilt based on my conscience and what I believe to be true and what I should be giving more to, but then I feel this pressure to conform to whatever this societal ideal that I'm, you know, living under is. And sometimes it's not even clear. And maybe it's because there's so many different opinions about what you should do that it kind of causes a little bit of anxiety or some other negative emotions along that process.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you
Yeah. It's
cannot.
really hard. I keep thinking.
Sorry, go
Oh,
ahead,
God.
Tristan.
Go ahead, go ahead. No, I was just gonna say like it's no, it's like I think about how like that has really gone out of hand. Where like now you'll go to like self checkout and they'll still ask you for like a 50% tip, and you're just like, I don't know who I'm tipping right now. Like I did this myself, but I think that what's I really am thinking about this. What is the relationship that I'm supposed to have with this ideal? Like I keep because what I keep thinking about is um, I'm like I think about I don't know. You could say take dogs. I think the dog example was an interesting example, right? Like when we kind of go further into this conversation of like, okay, why do you want to adopt a dog, right? And you might say, well, it's an injustice that there are so many dogs out there that are just unloved and yada yada yada, and then you decide to then your response to that is to adopt a dog, and this could be anything, and and then I wonder, okay, like adopting a dog will not solve the problem that you are putting forth, right? You put forth a problem, right? Which is like there's so many abandoned dogs that are not loved. You taking one dog doesn't do anything to solve whatever the real problem is, right? Because the question is, well, why are dogs abandoned? Why are there so many dogs that are out there hungry? Why are there so many dogs that are out there abused? And so it makes you wonder, like this thing that I have accusing like my own head, right? Like I'm sort of this is not an accusation towards uh, you or anybody that adopts dogs. It's more of an accusation, even like to myself. Like if I was to adopt a dog, was like it's like do you actually care about adopting dogs? Like I ask myself this question: how much do I really care if my response doesn't actually solve the problem and doesn't do anything for it? Like I feel like we want to justify certain things, and then this is where I wonder: like, is this the tyrant? Is this the tyrant that's like oppressing me, or is this actually a legitimate? Is this a legitimate uh, accusation against my pretend ideal? Like, do I think that I'm this amazing person because I've adopted a dog or I've adopted a child or I've done whatever, when in reality, I actually haven't done anything to solve the core problem of society? Or is this the tyrant that's just making me feel bad? I don't know if that makes sense. Like, I'm trying to work through. Something can push back on you for the better of you, right? So you could be challenged in a way that says you actually aren't doing enough and you should do more because you're lazy or whatever it is. But there's another challenge that's too much, right? There's the the sheer fact that you can't solve all the world's problems. And so I just wonder, how do we discern the right criticism? How do we discern the criticism for being a kind of a right criticism or criticism that's too heavy to bear? But I don't know how you guys hear that, but
I think that the most of the time we think that compassion is a virtue. I don't think so. I think that compassion is not a virtue per se. I think that compassion alone can get pathological, and I think that it's just it. How would you
that
put
doesn't
it?
mean it's not a virtue. I feel like
No,
that's a very strong statement.
hold on a second. No, hold on a second.
Go ahead.
So what we mean by compassion most of the time is that this feeling of deep empathy towards the otherness.
Yeah.
But this is compassion. Hey, you did something wrong to me, and you just want me to be compassionate or merciful. Hey, it's okay. Even though you did that, even though you weren't everything you could be, even though you betrayed the trust or whatever you did, it's okay. Like, I have compassion for you. But if I keep telling you that when you are just a liar and a person who is betraying me, and I never speak truth to that in that compassion, I've never speak truth in that context, how is that even virtuous? It's not virtuous. Just saying that I'm compassionate without speaking truth, or just telling you why you need to change and what is wrong and how you need to actually stop doing that, even though I'm having compassion, like, how is that even virtue? Like, it just becomes pathological. And so then you have, for example, there are many extremes of this, right? Then you cannot offend anybody, because if you offend me in my feelings, then you're being intolerant. You need to be compassionate. You need to accept everybody. And so then this discourse obviously is extrapolated into the political realm, but not only, also in relationships, right? It's funny because at church there are some people who frequently are late, right? And so when you mention this to them, hey, like, brother, what's up? They say, hey, please be merciful. It's like, hold on a second. Okay, so it is like the 20th time you are late, you have no children, and you live in Madrid. How is it possible that I have a newborn? I live 1 hour and a half away from Madrid, and I'm still on time, 30 minutes before church, and I'm almost never late. Now, 1 or 2 times, maybe. So how is it? And you are asking me for compassion, right? And so if I just extend compassion to this person, how is that virtuous? That is not virtuous. I think that in this sense, I would be, so to speak, masking my cowardice of not speaking up, because I think that, I need to be as patient as Jesus, for example. And so I'm not going to say anything to this brother. No, you are a liar. You are just afraid of speaking up, and you are masking your cowardice by saying that you are so patient and merciful, and you're just not virtuous. That is not true virtue. Does that make sense? And I think that this is where compassion gets really pathological. Just compassion alone is not virtuous. Well, anyways, that's my take.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, I think I agree, like, with the concept. The example that you chose is really interesting, though, because I think there's these interesting, like, in terms of, we're talking a lot about morality and this sort of ideal of utopia and what is right or wrong, and in this way that, like, we all agree on what those things are, like, as if everybody came to the same conclusion on what that is. But I think one of the interesting layers to it is cultural differences between different countries, for example, and what they perceive to be virtuous or good. Like, for example, like the example that you chose stuck out to me because the concept of time, for example, here in Brazil is very different than, like, in the United States. Like, in the United States, punctuality.
Surprise.
Yeah.
Latin America, baby.
In the US, like, punctuality is a form of respect, right? Like, if I respect you, I'm going to show up on time to our date, or, like, to whatever, like, our coffee, like, to go to get coffee. Right. And if by me showing up 30 minutes late, there's nuance to this, right? Like, there's sort of this list of exceptions, and it varies on the scenario, but in general, that's a good. On the flip side, like, other cultures have this concept of time that it's like the flexibility to receive people at different times is the good. So it's like I accept you for coming 2 hours late because we live in a world where we want to not be in a rush. We don't want
Okay.
to like constantly feel like I need to get to the next thing, and that is the virtue we're striving for. So you know what? Like the fact that you're showing up late, this is our like we value this is a family. That's actually not that important to us as a culture. So I think there's this interesting layer of like, okay, when we agree about that right or wrong, everything you're saying totally makes sense. But what about for things that are more cultural in nature and maybe have a little bit more? It depends on where you are, and like what, and it goes back to like what you need to conform to.
Right, right. So depending on
I
the
mean, 2 hours
culture,
is 2 hours is crazy though.
Hey,
right?
I agree. I agree. Let's be very clear. I like punctuality. I value punctuality.
Damn. She better be the one if you're
Go,
waiting
go.
for 2 hours, man. She better be the one. If you're waiting for 2 hours, she
I
better
was
be the
thinking,
one.
I was imagining a party, and I feel like that's a little bit different too in the U.S. You don't want to show
Yeah,
up. You don't want to be the first one, but still, like, if you're showing up 2 hours late to a party, you're like, that's disrespectful. But here, if you're showing up on time to a party, that's disrespectful. Like, hold up, like I wasn't expecting you here. Like, I don't have anything ready. So
right.
it's different.
Yeah, this is obviously you are pointing out uh, this higher good, right? So punctuality maybe in the US is a higher good than other things, like for example, hospitality is maintained as long as you are respectful about the time we meet, right? And so or we are planning on meeting, right? So for example, hey, if we meet at my house if we are going to meet at my house at 5 p.m., but you show up at 7, I'm no longer hospitable. Bye bye. I'm doing other things, right? And so in that case, right, in that case, punctuality is a higher good than hospitality, because
Right.
if you are not punctual, the other thing is this is a precondition for this to exist, right? And I think that in other societies, like my mom, whenever we meet, she's always 2 hours late. Now she's 1 hour late. So hey, she's improving,
Compromise.
yeah, after 20 years of telling her that. But anyways, and so sometimes mercy has to be extended for a long time. But I think that the tension, okay, so this is really really interesting, because I would say that each society or each culture has this background understanding of many assumptions that we just take for granted, right? Like as I told Tristan in other podcasts, like many times our true beliefs are inarticulated, they are implicit, they are irreflexive, and your true belief will are manifested in the way you act out in real life, day to day. What you default to, that is your true beliefs. It's not what you claim. I think Westerners are really obsessive about, oh, this is what I believe, and by that they mean intellectual assent to an idea or an axiom or a premise. But I think that phenomenologically speaking, or the way we actually our belief actually are expressed by the way we experience our real life, the way what those beliefs that are irreflexive, those are the true belief that are guiding your life and informing your action. It's not what you claim to believe. That is not true. That is a secondary thing, actually. If you can, I mean, that is why there is so much cognitive dissonance, right? The discrepancy between what you claim to believe and what you actually do
Right.
in your life. Exactly, that gap is what Westerners have to face. It's like, oh, I thought I believed this. Like, no. And I really like, there was a thing in Hinduism, there is a saying or something like that, that each action is a form of prayer. And I like that. That is actually precise, because when you pray, for example, when you pray to the divine or to God, right, you are manifesting your longings and your desires for that you want to see in reality, right? It's something like you are manifesting or appealing to the divine for you to become that type of person that you would like to be in the future, but you are not. This is an example of prayer. When you say, hey, Father, I want to be more pure,
Mhm.
right? So you are projecting a future self that is actualizing why you are still are not. You are just in potential that, but you need to self-actualize that in your spiritual life. So you are projecting this in our prayer. So you are hoping for the future to be better or to be a better self. So, but I think that another way of saying the same thing is that each action or each habit that is conducive to becoming a pure person is a form of prayer, right? So this is why I tell people, do not practice what you don't want to become. If you want to be a pure person, a monogamous person, do not watch porn, do not do certain things, because if you practice these things, they will shape you into that type of person that is going to be a cheater, that is going to be really hard for you to maintain a long-term relationship. But if you practice the other thing, like trying to be faithful, trying to
Mm.
control your mind, trying to just be open about your insecurities and all of that, and you do that deep work, those actions or these habits that are shaping you into a purer person or a more pure person is a form of prayer. And
Can you
so,
help me? Can you help me understand that? Because like when I
yeah.
think of prayer, like, and I think this is for most people, the immediate thing that comes to mind is a request, right? Even in the example you gave, a request to become closer to this ideal. But
Right.
how are my actions and what I do on a day to day, how are they a request, or are you defining prayer in a different way than that?
Well, because I mean, think this is really interesting if we go to the biblical passage, right? When Jesus says, like pray to God as if you have received it and you will receive it. It's something like that. It's like you have
Mhm.
to already internalize this request to the divine as if you already got it, as if it was
That makes
already
sense.
like it, as if it has already been granted to you, right? To be able to manifest that in reality, basically. Like I need to believe that if I ask the God to help me have a purer heart, that already happened for me to actually become the type of person, right? And I think that there is a close connection between the longing that I have of what I want to be, and then the habits and the practices and the things that I do daily that are shaping me into that type of person. And I think that when we match the two, there is a more harmonious relationship. I think that the
Right.
problem is that many times we want to divorce what we do and what we believe. But again, our true beliefs, our true longings, our true hopes are expressed in what we actually do in the day to day, because that is actually shaping you into a type of person. You
Right.
are not tabula rasa. You are always being formed into someone or something. The question is what's shaping you, what's forming you. But this idea that you can just do whatever in a detached manner and just be the same, that's a complete lie. That's why, for example, with casual sex, there is nothing casual about sex. It's an oxymoron, it's a contradiction. Once you put sex as a word, there's nothing casual about it. So you can compare casual, the adjective casual, to sex, for example, because there's nothing casual about sex, for example. But anyways, we got we
Well,
can get too
do you
deep
feel?
into that.
Yeah, I mean,
Tristan,
I'm curious. Can you guys hear me? Okay. I feel like I'm,
yes.
I'm getting a lot of like. Is it breaking up or is it good?
We're
Okay.
good.
Um, the I wonder if that really is like a problem for our society today. Like this disconnect between our actions and what we like and what we believe. Right. I think you bring up that a good idea. Like when it comes to casual sex, right? There's this ideal that we have, like mentally speaking, which is like I want to have intimacy in relationships. In a relationship with a person, but then you do not act as if you want that, right? And because casual sex, with many different partners, is not going to help you achieve the kind of intimacy that you truly want with one person. I'm seeing doubts in Santi's face, but you can tell me kind of what makes you doubt that. But go ahead.
Well, I was just thinking, I think most people, it's not necessarily that I disagree with it. I just think most people in society don't think that casual sex is an obstacle to intimacy. I think there's like fundamental differences.
I know. Well, I guess that's the point.
Yeah, that's the point. Right. But in their minds, that isn't a cognitive dissonance. Like their behavior is just moving along with what they believe is going to get them to the ideal. But like with things with cognitive dissonance, I think it's more so like when we know we're doing something contrary to what the ideals we hold, but we still like more so somebody that's actually trying to abstain from that whatever like kind of lifestyle shows up to church on Sunday, but was at the club on Saturday night. And then that like sort of like, okay, asking for forgiveness for it. That's kind of like what comes to mind. But I think most people, at least in that area of their life, I don't think that cognitive dissonance exists. I think they're just they have a different interpretation of how to reach the ideal.
Right.
But don't you think that it could just be like an immaturity of like it's the same thing as like the person that goes to the club the night before. I feel I see it the same way, right? Because a lot of people that go to the club the night before, they go to the church the next day. There might be some people that are out there, they don't see the difference. They don't see why that isn't necessarily glorifying God, because they're like, well, I'm just dancing. I don't see the problem, right?
I'm
You know,
referring to the
but
ones that
then
then
you
like
know
pray for
for
forgiveness the next day. You know, like the ones that like, no, they shouldn't have done
like
it,
the
but
ones
then
that
they roll
realize
up and they're like,
realize.
sorry, my bad, won't do it again. Next
Sure,
Saturday,
okay.
we're running it back.
I mean, I guess we have different categories of people, right? Because we have some people who are like, okay, their cognitive dissonance is like they know, like there's a part of them that understands that they're practicing something that is not ideal, but they don't have the strength to, to do differently, right? You know, they go to the club, they pray the next morning, and they say, "I'm sorry, I did it, but I was too weak." You know, I just love uh, who acts in a certain way, and they don't realize that this isn't going to help them. And I would say that maybe you could put the casual sex people in that category, right? Where it's like I don't see why this is a problem, and I think that like eventually time will tell, right? Like give it, and you'll find out how casual sex impacted that relationship that you had, that you have with that person, right? Because you will, I don't know, you could. I mean, I don't want to get too like, explicit or anything like that, but like, you end up having that issue of like, let's just say comparison, right? Where like the amount of insecurity that can come into a relationship because, one partner knows that you've had many other partners, or they know the partners that you had. And they're like, well, I don't really compare to that person, or what if this person is thinking that person, or maybe.
Hello.
Oh,
Tristen, your connection. Oh,
he left
no.
us.
I
I
think
think
we
his
lost.
point got across though.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
It looked like you had thoughts, Carlos.
Yeah, I think that is why when I introduced the podcast,
Can you hear me?
uh,
Okay.
Yeah, you're back. You're back.
Tristan, yes, but you are
I was
frozen.
disconnected.
We
I
heard.
tell you,
No, your point got across. You're good.
am I frozen? I should have done the Wi-Fi. I'm telling you. Okay.
Okay, just switch while I make my
Yeah,
point.
I
Just
should have done the
switch while
Wi-Fi.
I make my point. It's fine. We can't keep talking.
Make your. All right. I might have to leave.
Yeah, that's
I might
fine.
have to leave.
Just join back. It's fine because we're live, but you're able to join back, so it's fine. All right.
All right.
So I'm gonna make my point. That is an interesting predicament. I think that part of the complexity in these examples that we were discussing is that we have interpretations of the world, right? So we experience life through a hierarchy of value, through goods, different goods, things that we value. And I think that nowadays there is a huge people place a huge importance on pleasure, experiencing pleasure, or self-fulfillment in the form of pleasure, hedonistic type of ways. I want to enjoy my sexuality, and it should be completely free and all of that. And so you have this aspiration. Oh,
Can you see
yes, that's good. That's good, Tristen.
me? Is it better?
Yes.
Oh, is this? Can you see me clearly? I told you the Wi-Fi was the right
I knew
one.
he was gonna rub it in. I knew he was gonna rub it in.
Kind of. It's okay. We are going to have mercy on you.
Of course, man. You guys told me to do the.
Let's be clear. It's not great. All right, but go ahead.
I'm gonna have compassion on you.
It's not that great, but anyways. It's delay. Anyways, Tristen, just listen to me, okay? Okay. So what I was saying is that yes, you have these conflicting aspirations to different goods, right? And so I think that we are in a predicament where we want different things to be complementary, but many times they are exclusive. They cannot coexist with with one another. For example, right? Like sometimes we want to have be very fit, but many times we do not want to have the lifestyle of a person that is healthy, right? So we still want to eat pizza, not sleep at a proper time, not take care of our bodies and things like that. And so I think that there are desires that are in conflict all the time. There are rival desires, and I think that in the same way that there are rival desires or conflictive desires within us, there is also different ethical ideals or aspirations that we have in our hierarchy of value that are very hard to harmonize. For example, we were talking about like this idea of self-fulfillment in hedonistic pursuits, right? Such as casual sex, hookup culture, OnlyFans, all of that stuff. And people say, oh, there's no issue. We are free to do that. Self-determining freedom, self-expression. It's okay. Self-fulfillment. We need to fulfill ourselves to seek happiness. And this is pretty much the contemporary ethos of Western culture, right? This idea that a happy life, the vision of the good life, is that which allows you to fulfill yourself or to seek pleasure physically as well, in your sexuality, in the way you dress. And if somebody externally tells you something, they are oppressing you. And if you yourself are telling yourself to not give way to some pleasure, you are repressing yourself. And so it's either a form of oh no,
We knew it. We
Tristan
told
again.
him the Wi-Fi is more likely to drop. Now he's going to be
Bro,
humble.
it's fine. So I feel like if it's external, then we think, oh, that's oppressive. And if it's internal, oh, that's repressive. And so I think that we have this ethos that we cannot contemplate, so to speak, a fulfilling life in which we say no to pleasure. It's so hard for us to think that way right now, right? So that's kind of like the normal ethos. And I think that people, for example, have the desire of having a long-term relationship, a relationship in which they experience true intimacy and they feel safe, but at the same time they want to also experience their sexuality in any way, shape or form. Bro, what is this? Tristan again.
Now we're going to rub it in a little bit, Tristan.
I,
Don't even pay attention to me. Pay attention to me. Just keep going.
Okay,
And I
okay.
just
Keep
I don't know
going,
what
keep
it is.
yes, I will need to cut it and edit this because it's not gonna be good for the upload. It's okay. And so for example, I give you a true example, a real life example. Okay, so there was an acquaintance, an old friend, and this friend would say things like, hey Carlos, I really like my girlfriend, like I've been dating her for a long time, I really really like her, I want to treat her well, I don't want to cheat on her, I want to have a long-term relationship with her. But my friend also likes his freedom, and so he went party and he likes drinking when he goes out to party. And out of 20 times, 19 are fine. But the problem is that in the relationship that he had throughout the years, there was one time that he got drunk and he cheated on his girlfriend. And so basically every 2 years or 3 years, he is likely to mess up and be unfaithful, so to speak, because he's drunk and it's a moment of weakness, and that is not that is not his deepest desire, to be unfaithful or to cheat on his girlfriend, but it's the strongest desire at the moment, being at the disco and drinking with friends and things like that. And I told the friend, it's like, hey, your problem is not that you are too weak. The problem is that you think you are too strong. Because if you truly believe that you are too weak, you wouldn't go out and party, because you wouldn't trust yourself. And so that's why you will never see me exposing myself into situations where I know I'm too weak to handle, because I know I will mess up. And that doesn't mean that I do not love my wife. That doesn't mean that I do not believe in marriage. It just means that many times your strongest desires can trump your deepest desires if you do not protect yourself and you expose yourself into situations that are quite dangerous. And I feel like for us Westerners, that is so hard to understand. It's so hard to pay the price to these deeper longings that we have, because we still we want to have, what was the saying in English, like have cake and eat it too, or something like
Yeah, yeah,
that.
yeah. That's exactly it.
Yeah, it's like exactly. We want
Yeah,
we
have
want
your cake and eat it
everything. We
too.
want everything. We want everything. We cannot just pick and go without something. No, we want everything. And I think that this is the issue, right? Is that we are not actually, we have this idealistic vision of how of fulfilling life, but we don't have this realistic vision that actually you have to pay a price if you want to be this type of person who has a long-term relationship with somebody.
Yeah.
You have to pay the price. And this is not saying like, oh, this is horrible and things like that. No, it's like in relationships there are winters. In relationship, many times you have to cultivate the love. Otherwise it's tough. But it's not because you are forcing things. It's just that is, you have to structure your life in such a way that is conducive to keep feeding on that love. Like you need to protect the water, that love, that plant. And I think that we have this thing that, oh, love has to be spontaneous, and that feelings have the are the source of our ethics. Oh, if I don't feel it, then this might not be true. But this is the problem, is that I think I quoted on Twitter, on X, quote by Dallas Willard, The Renovation of Heart. And it's something like that. Like Willard was saying, he was a philosopher, by the way. And he said that people are in all sorts of addictions and problems with pleasures and pleasure seeking activities, because they are faced with so many decisions, but they can only make those decisions based on feelings. and so that's the thing, is that we have give
Mm,
uh, we have given too much importance to feelings as our as a source of truth or ethics or discernment. And this is the issue, is that feelings are not
Yeah,
enough.
I hear you. I hear you saying too, like just this idea that self denial doesn't really fit with this ethos of
Exactly.
self fulfillment. Like in this
Exactly.
in this in this world that really values gratifying self,
It's
it doesn't
incompatible.
follow the logic. Yeah, it's incompatible to then also hold that there's desire, strong desires, especially that I have to
Exactly.
gratify some really, like what do we call, like animalistic instincts
That
that
is
then
right.
have to be subverted to this other higher ideal. Like I feel like that just doesn't fit with modern thought that goes after self fulfillment. Although, like you can see the influence, even though it doesn't fit, most people still hold it in most scenarios. Like
Yeah.
that's why there's still like compatible marriage structures. Obviously there's divorce rates and all those things, but for the most part, people still deny themselves and instincts that they might have because they believe in, and whether they like verbalize it or not, that union is sacred and should, trump a desire to flirt with, a colleague and then whatever else that can lead to, even when there's chemistry. And it's interesting because I do feel like society does still hold those beliefs expressed through their actions, even though they're not articulated. But
Hmm.
of course, there's tons of ways that those things don't line up. And for the most part, we just give in. We're just like, if I'm feeling something strongly, then, there's no real room for, hold on, is this an actual desire that is good? Is this actually something that's going to create life?
Hmm.
Um, and maybe there's sacrifices that need to be made, even though I really, really want X, Y, Z.
And that is why that is the wrong interpretation
yeah.
of relationships or the world. Because I think that one of the characteristic of a person that is more mature, and if you ask the same people who are saying, oh, so hedonistic pursuits are the way of a fulfilling life, a happy life, then you ask them, who are the people you admire the most and you respect the most and feel loved the most by? And they will tell you people who are not driven by the principle of pleasure, but by the principle of love. And I think that that is one of the main characteristics of a mature
Mm,
person, is that they no longer follow the principle of pleasure. They follow the principle of love. And that is something that you learn as you grow. Actually, children cannot follow, like many times they are fully driven by the principle of pleasure, what is most gratifying right now, right here, right now. They are not thinking really long term. But as
mm,
you mature, as you become a more profound person, a deep person, a more spiritual person, you leave behind this principle of pleasure to be guided by a higher good. that is beyond feelings. And you learn to love and do well and be reliable, even in situations where you don't feel anything but just pain and suffering.
I kept thinking about this
What do you
study.
think that was? So what do you think?
Go ahead, Tristan.
Go ahead. Go ahead. No, go Santi. Go Santi. I'll probably break up
I was
anyway.
just thinking
So
about this
go
study
ahead.
that it came up like a million times while I was in college, where it was like they showed like they brought these kids into the room, and it was really simple. It was like, all right, right now I'm going to leave you with this marshmallow. If you can hold until I come back, you get 2 marshmallows. But if you eat it now, you don't get another marshmallow. And like then they, like the person conducting the study steps out of the room, and without fail, like you just see the pain in like all the kids' face, like like they're just staring at this marshmallow that like they can't resist, and without fail, like all of them take that marshmallow. I think there's like one that is like, especially with the uncertainty of when this person's coming back, and I feel like most of us, like we're not better than those kids with like most areas of our lives. We just want that instant gratification, myself included. I was thinking about like just phone and like the hit of social media going there so quickly. That's like my instant hit that, if I were to refuse in the moment, I would actually feel much better down the line.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I think an issue that we have, and I don't think it's just our society. I think it's maybe just a human problem, and maybe we see it more in our society. I don't know because I never lived in any. I didn't live 100 years ago or 300 years ago, but I find that like uh, we there isn't a lot of depth to our philosophy, like the philosophy of the world. I think at the moment, like I think we when it comes to this idea of like being guided by your feelings, like there's a part of that like I understand, and like you have these strong desires. One thing that we should try to do is understand those desires. And so I think that's, but like I feel like what the world will often say is listen to those desires and do whatever it is they may or may not say. Whereas I think the right interpretation is, or like I guess the right response is more like take time to understand what those desires are and where they're coming from, and with a moral compass you can understand better how to navigate those desires, how to handle those desires, and honestly be able to discern, are they good or are they bad? Are they going to lead to something better or not? Or whatever they might be, right? Like again, like there's so many, and I guess besides even those desires, I just keep having this in my mind, right? This idea of like, I don't know if I know a specific person, but like I'm thinking about like a person who's so torn up by like uh slavery in cocoa farms or something like that. I don't know. I'm just thinking about this because I was talking about chocolate with someone earlier today, you know? And you might have a person, right, who's super like, who maybe is touched by that, right? And so they decide to abstain from eating chocolate. And okay, great. Like that's fine that you've decided to abstain from eating chocolate, but this isn't going to impact a whole lot, right? Your abstinence from chocolate isn't like, that's I guess an okay response to the slavery that's going on cocoa farms in Africa. But you're really not. But if you really cared about the problem, like if that problem really genuinely mattered to you, you would understand that there's a lot more that needs to be done than just abstaining from chocolate. Or there's a lot. Or the problem is a lot more complex. And I feel as though like at times we don't think like 2 steps further than the decisions that we make. It's sort of like we have this feeling about a thing, right? Whether it be our sexual desire, whether it be about some good action it is that we want to take that we think is good for us or good for the world or whatever. But I think rarely go 2 steps further and think about what are the actual consequences of my actions, good or bad, and what's the impact that they'll make. And I just feel like that is a really, really important thing for us to kind of come to grips with, because I think if we did that, I think we would live more meaningful lives. I think we would live the lives of meaning that we're trying to live, but I think have a hard time living. If that makes sense.
That's such a funny. Sorry, can I jump in real quick? I was thinking how Western of a mindset that is, though, Tristan, of like this, like, okay, it has, in order for it to be a good decision to do, there has to be this measurable outcome that then justifies whatever the good is. Like in my
That is
mind,
what
though,
I was thinking. I was thinking the
yeah,
exact same thing.
Sure.
I feel like there is this inherent value. Like even if, like, whatever, like
No, no.
think even within a community, like we're not going to fix XYZ world problem or even local problem, but if we reflect what the ideal is, that is a good in itself. And like I'm not saying like, okay, like abstaining from chocolate is necessarily like a decision that I'm going to make or whatever, like, however, that goes down a lot of other rabbit holes. But like I feel like a decision to abstain or to do something, even if it's not justified by an outcome, does have inherent value. But that's like the thing that came to mind. I've talked a lot, so go for it, guys.
Yeah, I think there are two schools of moral philosophies. So one would place more the intrinsic value to the intent of the agent. So if I intend to do good, even if my action that was well intended or well meaning, like causes bad consequences, then even though the consequences were not the reflection of my good intention, it doesn't matter. Like I acted with a good heart, so to speak, and that is already of some value.
Right.
But then you have the utilitarians that would measure goodness in terms of the consequences, or sometimes in ethics they call it consequentialist as well. That's another way. So your claim, Tristan, when I was saying, oh my goodness, this is a consequentialist claim, is that the goodness of an action of an action is not measured by the intent of the agent, but by the consequences
Right.
that happen after the agent makes does something. And so then you will
But I
you
think that
will
there's definitely a level of truth to that. There's
yes,
definitely a
I
level of
think it's
truth to
both.
For sure.
Yes, I think that it's more. No, I think that becoming aware of the consequences of your action is a less naive manner of acting out in the world, right? And so I'm not saying that it has no value. It does have so much value, because you have less naivete. You are more informed of how you are very aware that your intention is not enough to do good in the world. And so, for example, there are it's like when somebody asks you, hey, can I help? And you say, no, thank you. You cannot help me, because you will make things worse. That's what you're thinking, but you don't say it, right? And so sometimes,
No.
even though the person wants to
Yeah.
help, the best help is to not help, because you are not equipped. The likelihood that you will make things worse is a lot higher than the likelihood that you will make anything better. And so that's why I think that a lot of people are just naive about their actions, because they think, oh, I just mean well. It wasn't a bad intention. It's like, yeah, bro, but that's not enough. You need to be more sophisticated than that. And I think that's why consequentially.
But yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I don't know. You guys seem to be mocking the whole consequentialist
No.
No, I'm
attitude,
not.
It's both
especially Satsi over here with Mister Western mindset. Out
Hey,
here.
I'm gonna
But
It's
I
very
will-
Westerner. It's very Westerner, though.
It is.
Oh, that's.
It objectively
I mean,
is.
maybe it is.
Hey, but just because it's
Now that's Western.
Right, just
Now
because
that's
it is
Western.
doesn't
Talking
mean it's
about
wrong.
objectivity. Talking about
Hold on,
objectivity is very Western.
Hold on. Just, I must say something. Just because, hey, everybody, if you are not Westerner, that's fine. But just because something is Westerner doesn't mean that it's not true. Let's just say that. Okay, because at times people say, "Oh, that's a Western idea,"
Okay.
and I'm like,
Yeah, you're right.
so what?
All right.
So
Yeah.
what? Yeah, so what? Just because the origin, or so to speak,
I agree.
the milieu in which that idea was fostered or promoted is Western culture, that doesn't necessarily negate the fact. Like, I mean, the law of gravity was, so to speak, formulated by Western thinkers, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the law of gravity is false, right? Just because it originated in the Western milieu of the intellectuals of that time, right? And so, in this, like in a similar manner, just because something is sometimes what's politically correct is correct. Okay. Yes, just because at times say, oh, but that's politically correct, and I'm like, bro,
Yes.
sometimes what's politically correct is correct. So it's fine by me. You know what I
Right.
mean? At times
Let
people
me
use these labels to say, oh, nothing can be good if it's politically correct. It's like, bro, many things that are politically incorrect are actually incorrect. Sorry.
Yeah, let me apologize to Tristan. When I said that, I just found humor in how Western of a take it was, but I wasn't implying that it was wrong because it was Western. But I do think I
Oh wow, that still
maintain.
hurts. That still hurts. I don't
Hey,
know
hey,
what it is. Well, I'm hearing that. It's even worse.
I
Go
just maintain.
ahead. We
Yes,
have to. Yeah.
in some realms, consequentialism makes sense, and we don't have to flesh all of them out. But like in terms of this sacrificing for a social good, I do think intent matters in many of those situations. And yes, like forming a strategy
Yeah.
for how to impact whatever injustice that you're trying to do, it matters. And I'm not saying be naive, but I think there is a role for intent in there. And that's just my view. And I think
Yeah. I'm
that's what I
not
was trying to
anti-intent.
express.
I'm not anti-intent. Yeah. I feel it, and I'm not like I don't like maybe I came off as like wow, like your intent doesn't
You're like,
matter,
you hate
and
chocolate.
I
Or
apologize if that was the case. The thing, all I'm saying is I'm never going to stop eating chocolate. That's what I'm really trying to get to. No,
yeah,
I'm kidding. But I'm just trying to get at the idea of like the consequences matter because your intent, as again, like basically what we just talked about, your intent, as good as it might do worse or do nothing.
right.
And so you basically, it's the person that like talks a really big game, right? Like I have a hard time listening to a person talk about how much they care about a cause and then do so little for that cause. And the thing that they have to demonstrate for that cause is something that's inconsequential to does that make sense? Like, and that's what the thing is. Like, I feel like there's sometimes, and again, this, and maybe I can't tell if we're talking about different things, but like, I guess what the deeper place that I'm trying to get to is, I feel like we think and we act, and they're just completely separate in our society. The things that we do, the things that we say are
Yes.
completely separate, and we talk a big game, and we just have nothing to show for it. Often, I see it very often, and I think it can be very frustrating to me. And I think maybe I feel the frustration in society. By the way, we have to finish soon because I
Yeah.
have to catch a train.
Yeah, I think that the whole, if we were to summarize this in in non-technical language or terms like consequentialist and things like that, we would say like there are people who do the right thing for the wrong reason, and there are people uh who does the wrong thing with the right no, what would it be the other way around, like a
I don't know.
person that, like there are
There's gonna
people
be
who do,
there's wrong
hold on,
things for the wrong reasons, right things for the right reasons, right?
who does the wrong things with the right reason.
Just
I
go with
guess
the
that would,
technical language is what you do best.
yeah, whatever. No, just kidding. Wow, Santi, you're on fire, man. You are being so
Hey man,
kind.
I feel
Yeah, he
like
really
I know you
is.
guys in real life.
No,
You
just
guys are
kidding.
spicy. I was just like,
Just kidding.
I want to bring in the heat.
He wants to
No,
bring it in. He wants to bring it in. I'm good. I'm glad. I'm grateful we
care,
have you, Santi.
people who play with fire get burned, bro. Be
It's
careful.
coming back to me. I'm ready
Be
to take
careful.
it.
So I think that in the end, what we want obviously is to do the right thing with the right, like by the having the right reason or the right intention, right? That's, I guess, this alignment that we need. Like it's both end. So we need to have both things. But anyways, so the book that Santi was quoting was "You Are Not Your Own," right, Santi?
Yeah.
Who is the author?
Off the top of my head, I'm blanking. We can maybe post it in the description.
Okay,
But
you are not your own. Everybody will be in the description of the live stream or the podcast show notes. But that's everything on our end. We'll be joining you with better connection, better camera quality, and all of that. And yeah, with Tristan's Wi-Fi
Apologies.
next time. But that's everything on our end.
Apologies.
And yeah, I mean, say bye, everybody.
Goodbye, everyone. I'm so sorry for my connection. Thank you for your patience.
Peace. Let me see.